Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a bit of a shortcut, actually, to getting you well informed about something incredibly vital, yet, well, often overlooked, the world inside your nose.
That's right.
We've received some really fascinating source material that introduces a term, I love it, the nasaloma. Get ready to discover why this specific part of your body might be far more connected to your overall health, and especially your brain, than you ever imagined.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how, seemingly small habits can have such a widespread impact. Our mission today is really to unpack the science behind this nasaloma, identify maybe some hidden dangers to it, and offer practical, actionable insights for your health.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What exactly is this nasaloma that our source material introduces?
So the nasaloma is basically a term that's been coined to describe the nasal microbiome. All the tiny organisms, the bacteria, the fungi, everything living in your nose.
Like the gut microbiome.
Exactly like that, or the one on your skin. These tiny inhabitants are all interconnected and really vital. And our sources highlight that this area has often been, well, punished is the word they use, through just common daily habit.
Punished. So what does this all mean for us? Why should we, really care about this specific microbiome?
Well, think about it. What happens when you just can't breathe through your nose? You know that feeling.
Oh, yeah, awful.
Our source really wants you to visualize that discomfort, difficulty, sleeping, eating, even speaking clearly. But beyond just comfort, a correctly functioning nose is absolutely crucial for smell and taste.
Right.
So this raises a pretty important question. If the nose is so fundamental, what happens when its internal environment gets, well, disrupted?
Here's where it gets really interesting, I thought. Our source makes a very direct and frankly maybe a bit alarming connection right from the start.
It does. It connects it straight to the brain.
Wow, okay. So our source points out several common habits that can silently damage your nasal microbiome. Let's talk about them.
Yeah, we're talking about things most of us probably do. Excessive or really forceful nose blowing, maybe nose picking, even just chronic allergies that lead to that constant stuffiness.
That feeling of always being blocked up.
Exactly. And the source suggests that if you're consistently getting a stuffy nose right after eating, that could be a signal something isn't quite right, systemically.
But the big one, the one that really jumped out at me from our sources, is the use of nasal sprays. I mean, we use them to clear congestion, right?
Right.
But what's the long-term impact?
This is such a crucial point. The chronic use of nasal decongestants, especially the vasoconstrictors or corticosteroids, is described as having a pretty disastrous impact.
Disastrous.
That's the term used, particularly at the neurocognitive and brain level. And this raises an important question because our sources point out that anosmia, the loss of smell,
Right.
is often an early sign of conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Wow.
And this often coincides with the persistent use of these very products. It's a connection we're thinking about.
That's quite a connection. So if the nasal microbiome is so delicate and disrupting it is so impactful, what's fascinating here is how it connects to, well, seemingly every other part of our body.
Exactly. Our sources really emphasize that the nasal microbiome is as important as any other precisely because of its wide-ranging connections. It's linked directly to your ears, your mouth, your eyes, your brain.
Okay.
But even more broadly, through what's called the common immune system of mucous membranes, it's actually connected to your entire body. It's all one system.
Okay, let's dive into some of those specific connections mentioned in the sources. First, the ears. Many of us use cotton swabs, right, for hygiene. What does our source say about that?
Yeah, the source warns pretty clearly that using cotton swabs in the ears can actually disrupt the ear's own microbial balance. And that can potentially lead to things like instability, vertigo, or even vestibular disorders.
Really? From cotton swabs?
Which are, in turn, connected back to the nasal microbiome. It's a chain reaction.
Okay. And the mouth, the oraloma, as our source calls it. How does that factor in?
Well, any oral disruptions, think cavities, plaque, tartar, even things like dental implants or maybe older amalgam fillings, these can directly influence the nasaloma.
Because they're so close.
It's all part of one interconnected system, yeah. What happens in your mouth doesn't just stay in your mouth.
This raises an important question then. What about more invasive procedures, like nasal surgeries? Our sources specifically mention rhinoplasties and also procedures for carne crescita, which I think is turbinate hypertrophy.
That's right, enlarged turbinates. And yes, whether it's for trauma or aesthetic reasons, rhinoplasties can kind of reconfigure the whole biomechanical structure of the nose.
Okay.
And that directly influences the ability for the good nasal microorganisms to regenerate. Similarly, surgery for turbinate hypertrophy, while it frees up airflow, which is good,
Right.
it really necessitates repopulating the nasal microbiome afterward because you've changed the environment.
Got it. Finally, let's talk about the eyes. Our sources mention that if you get itchy eyes and nasal congestion at the same time, it might not just be simple allergies acting up separately.
That's right. It's often related to a histaminergic reaction, histamine release. And the source even suggests looking at how you're managing cortisol levels. Stress plays a part.
Ah, stress again.
It's just another reminder that these seemingly isolated symptoms are often really interconnected, part of a bigger picture.
So what does this all mean if we have a persistent nasal obstruction or nasal dysbiosis, as our source describes it, that imbalance?
Yeah, our sources are very clear on this. Disconfiguration or dysbiosis in the nasal microbiome will affect the brain. It really emphasizes that so many people have just gotten used to living with a perpetually stuffy nose.
You just accept it.
You accept it. You don't even realize what it feels like to breathe correctly, properly through the nose anymore.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The source highlights that humans are apparently the only mammals who can consciously use their mouth as an alternative breathing pathway.
That's what they say.
But normalizing this, breathing through your mouth all the time because your nose is blocked, that's not really physiological, is it?
Not at all. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the nose is designed to be your first line of defense. It's like this incredibly sophisticated filter.
Right.
It has all these structures inside to clean, warm, and humidify the air you breathe. When that's compromised, your whole system is just more vulnerable.
Makes sense.
Actually, the source shares a personal anecdote here about the author having a deviated septum from an accident
Oh.
and using sprays constantly, only to realize much later the potential detrimental effects on the brain. It really made them rethink things.
Wow, that's powerful. Okay, this deep dive has shown us just how crucial our nasal health is. So what can we actually do? What can our listeners do to support their nasaloma and avoid these disruptions?
Well, the good news is the sources offer several really actionable strategies. First, a simple but surprisingly powerful technique. Alternated breathing, the kind often learned from yoga.
Madi Shodhana.
Exactly.
Mm.
You cover one nostril, inhale, then cover that nostril and exhale through the other, and just alternate this pattern gently. And this isn't just relaxing, it actually stimulates your nasal microbiome. It can oxygenate parts of the brain that might have been a bit, suffocated, as the source puts it.
Interesting.
And it can even help with things like fatigue, maybe even taste perception, and definitely sleep issues like snoring or sleep apnea.
Okay, that sounds worth trying.
Yeah.
And for just general nasal care, like when you are congested, what does our source recommend instead of those sprays?
For congestion, simple, sterile, physiological saline solution is good. You can buy it, or you can even make it carefully with boiled water and pure sea salt in the right proportions. Seawater itself, properly prepared, can also be used.
Right.
However, and this is important, our source cautions against excessive, forceful nose blowing or doing those constant nasal washes with syringes,
How is that?
because they can literally sweep away the beneficial nasal microbiome you're trying to nurture. Occasional, gentle use might be okay, but it shouldn't become a regular, harsh habit.
Got it. Gentle is key. Now, beyond direct nasal care, the sources really emphasize the broader picture. Diet and lifestyle, how does that connect?
Oh, absolutely. The nasal microbiome is completely connected to your digestion, to your gut. So a healthy, conscious diet is just paramount for detoxifying the whole body and supporting all your microbiomes.
So food first.
Food first, definitely. Only if that's not enough should you maybe consider supplements, as the source warns against their, often erroneous popularization. Focus on whole foods.
Okay, so what are some of the key dietary culprits our source identifies? The things to watch out for?
The biggest disruptions seem to come from, the usual inflammatory suspects. Gluten, especially if there are excessive traces.
Okay.
Refined white flours or refined sugars, and dairy, particularly cow's milk. These are generally seen as inflammatory foods that can impact the whole system.
Right, the inflammatory load. What else impacts this delicate balance?
Well, persistent stress. We mentioned cortisol before. High cortisol levels can alter immune function and definitely worsen nasal dysbiosis. And really big one, sleep.
Sleep, always sleep.
Always sleep. Restorative sleep is just essential for rebalancing all microbiomes, but especially the nasal one. That's when a lot of repair happens.
This raises an important question, though. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? You can't sleep well with a stuffy nose,
Right.
but we've just said that decongestant sprays are counterproductive long term. So what's the natural solution for that immediate problem when you're trying to sleep?
That's a great question. Our source suggests simple things like those nasal strips that physically open your nostrils.
Oh yeah, the external ones.
Exactly. And also, try to have a minimum 4-hour fast between your last meal and going to bed.
4 hours. Why?
It gives your digestive system time to rest, reduces potential reflux or inflammatory responses overnight that could contribute to congestion, just lets everything settle.
Interesting tip. And what about our environment, our homes?
Yeah, good point. Excessive air conditioning or heating can really dry out the air, and that affects your nasal microbiome. So maybe a humidifier can help, or even just cracking a window slightly. Definitely avoid chemical air fresheners and insecticides if you can. And importantly, check your home, especially the bedroom, for any signs of mold or dampness.
Oh, mold is a big one.
A huge one, very detrimental to the nasal microbiome. And finally, something simple. Pay attention to the fabrics of your bedding and pillows. Natural, breathable materials contribute to better rest and indirectly to nasal microbiome renewal.
Wow, what a deep dive indeed. From, common habits we barely think about to these surprising connections all over the body, it's really clear the nasaloma is this tiny world with just huge implications for our health.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this deep dive really shows us that the nose isn't just for breathing or smelling. It's a frontline defense system, a key indicator maybe of your overall metabolic and even neurological health.
So, what does it all mean for you listening? Maybe consider this provocative thought. Could paying closer attention to your nasal health, really integrating some of these insights, could that be one of the simplest, yet maybe most profound ways to unlock better well-being and maybe even sharper brain function in your daily life? Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.